Do I need to hide? Yes.
Welcome, everybody. We're gonna give a few more minutes so everybody can join. Thank you for joining us today. Edmilson from Cultura will be here soon to welcome you too. So while we wait, why don't you tell us where you are calling from? Where are you watching us from? Please put on the chat. Where are you talking from? It's good to know. Hello, welcome. Hi, Gabriela, Pedro, hello from Curitiba, good. BH, Recife, Pernambuco, hello, Belo Horizonte people. Wow, we're traveling all over Brazil now. Lafayette, Minas Gerais. Itajubá, Pouso Alegre, wow, so many beautiful places from Brazil. I think Sarah will like that. Pará de Minas, I don't know that. I've never heard of Pará de Minas. Welcome, Julia. Joinville, nice to have you here. We have many people joining already. Let's give maybe one more minute and then we can start our webinar today. Okay, keep telling us. More João Pessoa, Recife, BH as well, Montes Claros City, I love that. Juiz de Fora, Coronel Fabriciano, Pouso Alegre, Franca, wow. Do you think we are ready to go, Ed? Can we start?
It's up to you, Anna.
So, yes.
It's up to you.
So, let's go.
Yeah, okay. You are the boss. Okay, everyone, let's start officially our event. First of all, I would like to welcome and thank and congratulate everyone, okay, on the interest, on the initiative of taking the exams. Okay, we have here candidates from Cultura Inglesa Belo Horizonte and other Culturas Inglesas and partner schools around Brazil. So once again, congratulations on the initiative. Okay, so you have no idea, okay, the step ahead you are taking in obtaining and pursuing the international certifications. So on behalf of Cultura Inglesa, Cambridge, Brazil, I would like, once again, thank you so very much. I would like, Alberto will introduce Sarah, but I would like to give my most heartwarming thank you to Sarah for taking the time. Okay, it's an honor, it's a privilege to have you here with us. Just some reminders. We are live on YouTube as well. Okay, you just have to search. If you hear of any friends having trouble accessing Zoom, you just have to search Cultura Inglesa BH. Okay, on YouTube we have the live transmission there. Very important. If you are going to post questions here on Zoom, use the Q&A because it's easier for us to filter the questions. Okay, so we have a tool on Zoom, Q&A. Please post your questions there. If you want to post the questions in English, it's fine. If you want to post the questions in Portuguese, it's also fine because we can translate them and pass them on to Sarah. Okay. I think we are ready to start. Okay, once again, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful event. Alberto, Sonia.
Ok, thank you, Edmilson. Boa tarde, pessoal. Boa tarde a todos, boa tarde a todas. Well, I am Alberto. I'm sure many of you already know me. I'm from Brazil and I am speaking from São Paulo. But I would like to introduce my colleague, Sarah Ellis, who's here talking to us. Hello, Sarah, and welcome to Brazil once again.
Well, thank you very much, Alberto, and hello to everyone. It's great to be here. And yes, so I'm Sarah, and I work with Alberto at a distance.
Yes, we are in different countries, but we work in the same team, which is called Assessment Services. And we are very happy to be here with you, with Cultura Inglesa students and teachers and families, to talk about the Cambridge exams. We are aware that many of you will be sitting the exams very, very soon, right, Sarah? So we have some tips and strategies for the exam day, and I hope this is useful. But Sarah, where exactly do you come from and where are you based?
Okay, I think we've got a little slide to help, but I'm actually from UK, and this is my town in the UK called Folkestone in the southeast in the region called Kent. And as you can see, it's not that far from France across the water. And when the weather is very good, I can actually see France in the distance. It's quite amazing.
That's nice.
It's amazing. And also, some of you might have heard of Dover, the White Cliffs of Dover, which are very famous. And it's also that's very close to Folkestone, where my town is. And also, there is the tunnel. The Channel Tunnel is also not far from where I live. So you can either go by boat to France or you can go under the sea and by train in the Channel Tunnel. So that's the area I live in. Yeah. But I'm not speaking from there now because I'm actually in Italy. So I live and work in Italy, and I'm lucky enough to live in Florence, so in Tuscany in Italy. It's a beautiful town. I often say I live in two towns, Folkestone with an F and Florence with an F. So from Folkestone to Florence, that's me.
That's really nice. I haven't been to Folkestone yet, but I've been to Florence and it's a beautiful place. I think you are really privileged.
I'm
And I
very
think
lucky.
the students are privileged as well to hear about the exam tips and strategies from someone like you, because you are very experienced. You've been in Cambridge for a long time and you have a lot of great experience to share with our students in Brazil.
And like you, Alberto, yes, I was a teacher and an examiner, and I was responsible for running exams. So I know about lots of the problems or lots of the questions that students have. So Alberto and I really hope we can give you more confidence to feel ready for the exam day, and maybe some tips for that last minute preparation before the exam.
Yes, and just to reinforce what Edmilson said, podem digitar perguntas em português que eu traduzo aqui para a Sarah, tá bom? Feel free to write in Portuguese if you want to ask a question, and you know it might be quicker in Portuguese as well. Don't worry. Okay, so we have some information and tips to share with you, right, Sarah? We can see this student here working so hard.
Yep, absolutely. And we know that the better prepared you are, the better you're going to do in the exam. So that's the idea as well. And the more confident you feel, I think that also helps you perform and do your best on the exam day.
Yes, I mean, we all know that you have been studying very, very hard for the exams. And that's the typical situation before, just before the exams. And today we're going to talk about the strategies, but also some tips for the exam day, right? So it's very important that you prepare for the exam day. And nowadays, I think we tend to carry a lot of things because we receive a lot of information from different sources, different devices. But when we are preparing for the exam day, we need to be very minimalistic, right, Sarah? There are
Absolutely.
only a few things that we can bring to school on the exam day, right?
And if you know in advance, then you won't take too many things with you and be disappointed when you can't take them into the exam room. So we want to give you some tips about what you can take and what you should do.
Yes.
So,
I think, Sarah, one of the main questions we get is they are related to the exam dates and times, right? How should students know about this?
Well, it's very important to check with your Cultura Inglés staff, because they will know the exam date for your level and for where you are. So make sure you check what day you're doing the reading, the listening, and the writing, because it may not be the same day as the speaking. The speaking might be on the same day, or it might be on a separate day. So it's very important to be careful to check that information. Also, don't forget that it's important to arrive in advance, so that you're also ready to go into the exam room. They can check that check, and we'll talk about that in a minute, check your identity, etc. But it's very important not to be late. And also, if you arrive in a hurry, you'll feel more stressed in the exam. So arriving in time so that you feel more relaxed and that you can be checked into the exam room. So that's also important. So check the date, check when you're taking the speaking test, and check what time you're starting the exam.
Yes, and also Brazil is such a huge country, and students will be doing different exams, which will probably be on different dates. So it's very important to go to your Cultura Inglés staff, talk to your teacher, talk to the staff at the reception, and find out about the date and the times. And please arrive earlier, everyone. Don't arrive in the last minute, for your own benefit. Okay?
This is where you have to be very English about time.
Yes, yes.
Be punctual.
Yeah, and also there are other things that they need to bring with them, right?
Yep, absolutely. You will need to have an official document, an identity document. So I think you can take your ID card or your passport, and anything else, Alberto, that's accepted for identification?
Maybe your driver's license as well, if you already have a driver's license.
It needs to have a picture, doesn't it? It needs to have a picture
Yes.
on it, yeah, so they can check it's you. So that's really, really important that you don't forget that. It's
Yeah.
the first thing.
And also, the exam day is not the day for you to bring a whole backpack of materials and stuff, right? So it's very important to be minimalistic. All you need for the exam is basically this, right, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. This is all that you can take into the exam room. You can take a pencil, a pen, a rubber, and a pencil sharpener. And
Yeah.
what else can we take, Alberto? There's some other things, aren't there?
Yes, of course, you might feel thirsty during the exam, so it's okay to bring water with you, but just make sure that the water bottle or the water container don't have any kind of labels or words or anything. So you need to remove the labels and make sure that there are no words, especially words in English, in the water container, for example. It has to be plain, right?
Absolutely.
So without labels. Yeah.
So yes, we appreciate the weather is getting warmer, so you might want to take water, and you might think it's rather unusual to take the label off, but it's really very important. So either take a water container that has no writing, or take the label off your bottle.
Yes, and that's basically all you need. And your pen can be either black or blue, right? As long as it is a typical ballpoint pen. So either black or blue pen, right? And then, Sarah, there are other things you need to be aware of.
Now, this is a new regulation, and I'm sure if you think about it, you won't be surprised, is of course you can't take your phone with you. And you also, from very, very recently, also can't take a watch, not any kind of watch. You can imagine the reasons why, because of course digital watches are not just watches. So the regulation, to make things simple, is no watches of any kind. So an old-fashioned watch, no. Obviously an iPhone, what's it called? The phone, a digital watch is absolutely
A smartwatch,
no.
yeah.
That's the word, a smartwatch. Absolutely no. So make sure it's probably best to leave it at home or to give it to someone before you go to the exam.
Yes. So thank you, Sarah. Those items are not allowed in the exam room, right? So it's very important to remember that. Be minimalistic for the exam day, right?
We've got lots of questions about whether we can use an automatic pencil, Alberto.
automatic pencil is, I'm not sure.
Do you remember that's the one where you have to press the button and I would suggest
Okay.
it's best to take a normal pencil.
Yes, it's okay as long as it is a ballpoint pen, the very ordinary pens that we use in general. And make sure that if you're bringing an automatic pen, it shouldn't have words written on it,
Yeah.
or especially words in English. So just bring an ordinary pen, which is either black or blue.
And if you're talking about an automatic pencil, it's the kind of lead which is important, because it should be HB, so not too hard, otherwise it doesn't work, and you'll see why.
Yeah.
So it's probably simpler to have a normal pencil and a pencil
and
sharpener.
HB is also soft for you to shade the boxes or the circles in the answer sheet. We are going to talk about that, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
But also, you need to be aware of the COVID-19 protocols on the exam day, right? Talk to your Cultura Inglesa staff, because there are things that will be in place, like you have to wear a mask, you have to make sure you sanitize your hands all the time, and you also have to make sure that while you are outside the exam room, keep social distancing as much as possible.
Absolutely. This, of course, is something different and something that may seem very strange, but of course you understand the reason. So really help the exam centre with this by making sure you have your mask, obviously sanitize your hands and keep away from everybody else.
And Cambridge has a number of protocols in place. So talk to your Cultura Inglesa and find out about them, and be prepared. And remember, don't carry a lot of materials with you for the exam day, right?
Yes, you can't take your bag into the room, or if you have to, you can't keep it with you. So that's another consideration as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. So it's time to prepare for the exam day, right? So one of the things we need to do on the exam day is to manage our time. We received some questions before the webinar, Sarah, about managing our time. So, of course, speaking about time, arrive 30 minutes earlier. But there are other things we need to consider in terms of timing, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, each part of the exam has a different time, as you know. So just remind yourself or check with your teacher exactly how much time you have for each part of the exam. Don't forget that when the time has finished, the exam centre will stop you, and you can't say, "Oh, I haven't quite finished," because the instructions are the time is the time. So when the time is over, they will stop you. So try and help yourself by using the time well.
Yes. Also, timing has to do with the different paper, right, that you are doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, Alberto, because in the reading and use of English, there's no extra time to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet. So it's included in the total time. Now, it's different in the listening where you have extra time. So make sure that you know the difference. So reading and use of English, no extra time. You must have your answers on the answer sheet before the end of the test. So watch the time.
Yeah, it's always good to leave around 10 minutes for you to make sure you have plenty of time to transfer the answers, right?
And it sounds like sometimes it's a good idea to practice it before the exam. So you get used to the idea of how much time it takes you to copy the answers onto the answer sheet. But also when you do writing, there's obviously also the time of the whole paper, but you have more than one question. So make sure you're using the time well. For example, you have 2 tasks in B1 and B2. You should use 50% of the time for each question. So make sure you know what's the half time. Then I'm going to use 50% of my time for question 1 and 50% of my time for question 2.
And still, there's one more point about the listening paper. We talked about reading and use of English, writing, but what about listening?
Exactly. So that's the difference between the reading and use of English if you're B2 or C1 or C2. is that in the listening paper, you write your answers on the question paper while you're listening. And then at the end, you will be given time to transfer the answers from the question paper onto the answer sheet. But that also has a time. So if they say 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes. You can't say, oh, I haven't quite finished copying. Copy it. My recommendation is, as soon as they tell you to transfer your answers, is transfer what you've put. If you want to rethink it, do it once you've transferred it, so that you know you have transferred the answer. Would you agree, Alberto, about that?
I do, yes. And in order to help the students managing their time, it's very important to kind of do this refresher activity, which is how long does each component last? So I need to make sure I remember this for my own exam. So if you are doing, for example, B1 preliminary, here is an overview of all the components in this exam. And it's very important that you remember how long each paper lasts so that you can better prepare. So we have the timings here or the length of the papers for each of the exams, B1 preliminary. You will notice that if you are doing B2 first, you have much longer components compared to B1, right, Sarah?
Absolutely. And of course, when you're practicing near the exam, a good thing is to be noticing how long it's taking you to do each part, so that you make sure that the summary of the time is obviously the total amount of time. So yeah, really, but just before the exam, really remind yourself of how much time you have.
Yes, and when we look at C2, C1 advanced and C2 proficiency, the length of time is very similar, but we have differences in the number of tasks, for example, or parts. So it's very important to be aware and to be reminded of all those parts and tasks in your exam, the exam that you are sitting, right?
And probably one of the things to help you, Albert, if I may, is that when you're in the exam room and you have the exam paper, you can just check all the pages so that you remember how many parts, and make sure that you don't get to say, oh, I've run out of time and I've still got part 7 to do. So it's a good idea to also look at the physical paper.
Mm-hmm. And I am aware that the teachers in Cultura Inglesa have worked through this with the students. And many of you may have done the mock exam already, so make sure that you go back to your mock exam and remind yourselves of all the different parts and exam tasks, right, Sarah?
Absolutely. And there is a question in the chat about whether they're going to take the test on computer. Well, that I can't answer that, but obviously you need to check with your school.
Yes, because some Cultura Inglesa branches will be offering computer-based exams. It's very important that you go to Cultura Inglesa staff and talk to them and check your format of your exam.
So that's actually one of the most important questions to ask at the beginning is, am I taking the paper-based exam or am I taking the exam on computer? Okay, and they will be different dates as well. So, so again, just double check with your school.
Yeah, right. Sarah, one of the questions that we got most frequently before the webinar was, should I use a pen or a pencil in the Cambridge exam in case I'm not doing the computer-based exam, right? If I'm doing the paper-based exam, should I use pen or pencil?
I think that's a very good, important question. So thank you for asking that question, because it changes.
It's not just the pen or the pencil, but the dynamics of how to do things during the exam, right, Sarah? So here, for example, we have answer sheets.
So we were talking about the importance of your HB pencil. That's because you're going to write your answers on an answer sheet. So you have the question paper, so you can write notes on the question paper, but remember, those notes will not count towards your result. What's important is that you transfer your answers onto the answer sheet, which looks like this, more or less. And you can see that on the first part, there are what they call lozenges or sort of circles that you need to fill in with your pencil. And this is why the type of pencil you're using is important, because it's going to be scanned by a computer. So if you use a soft pencil, the computer can read your answer. So it's very important that you're thinking about your pencil.
Yes.
And you can see there's little boxes. In fact, these are the exams that you're going to be using. You can see for all exams there'll be an answer sheet for you to fill in. And in the little boxes you're writing a letter. And just make sure you're writing clearly in those boxes and sometimes you have to write a sentence or a word. You can see in the third part of this particular example. And again, just make sure your writing is clear. As a tip.
Yes.
You can write in capital letters or you can write in normal handwriting. What's important is it's clear.
Yeah. Just a quick reminder, if you are doing B1 preliminary, you have the answer sheet for the reading paper. But if you're doing B2 first, C1 advanced, C2 proficiency, you have answer sheets for the reading and use of English paper, which is full of information, lots of circles for you to shade or to make sure you paint the little circle very carefully, right?
Yes.
And you must use a pencil for the
Yes.
answer sheet.
There's one little thing to point out, just so that you know, is you can see in part 2, part 3, and part 4 of this paper, there's a column on the right with 2 little circles. That's not for you. That's for the examiner, or that's for the correction. So don't write anything there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. And we also have answer sheets for the listening paper, right?
Yeah, and this is, of course, you'll do the listening test, focus on the question paper, don't write on the answer sheet while you're doing the listening test. So this is it's different from the reading and use of English, which you can do your questions and write during the time, because you have to finish within the time. In the listening test, you do the listening questions, write on the exam question paper, don't look at the answer sheet until you hear on the recording. So you now have 5 minutes to transfer your answers, and you need to notice that 5 minutes and copy your answers from the question paper onto this answer sheet. So that's very important. That's what I was saying. Think about copying it onto the answer sheet. And then if you're not quite sure about an answer, use the time after you've copied it. Otherwise, if you start thinking, oh, I can't quite remember that one, maybe you won't finish copying your answers. Would you agree, Alberto?
I do. And just a word of warning, this is the sample answer sheet for the C1 advanced exam. But the answer sheets for the listening paper for the other exams, they are similar, but not exactly the same. So this is just a sample, but you need to use a pencil for the listening answer sheets.
So the answer sheet is designed for your exam, so it might be slightly different than the one that you can see on the screen.
Yes. And then when should we use a pen, Sarah?
Okay. So here we have a change for the writing part, and we can show the list of tests where you're going to need to write. So in these tests, when you get to the writing section, you need to write in pen. That's very important. Now, you might be writing some notes. That's fine, and you can write your notes, but you cross them out if they're notes, and then you write your answer in pen. And it's important that the pen is either black or a dark blue, so it's easy to read. So you can't use a different colour. You can have extra paper to make notes, but you may not need it. You can write some notes on the question on this answer sheet. But the important thing is that you cross them out, and you can't take your extra piece of paper out of the room. So if you do make notes on an extra piece of paper, you will have to leave it in the room. You can't take it away. And
Sarah, being a Brazilian teacher, I have noticed some habits in Brazilian learners. They want to write a sample of their composition, and then they want to rewrite it in the actual answer sheet. Should we do this?
That's a very good question. And in fact, that's a problem around the world, that students want to do a beautiful piece of writing. Actually, it's not a good way to use your time. It's a good idea to do a plan, so spend a short time doing a plan, but not to write the essay and then to copy it again. Don't do that. What you need to do is write your essay on the answer sheet. If you make a mistake, not a problem. You just cross it out and then write what you wanted to write. Just remember that the essay needs to be clear, not beautiful. So if you've got a few mistakes that are clearly crossed out and then you've written what you wanted to write, that's okay. The examiner is not interested in it being beautiful. The examiner needs it to be clear so they can follow your writing and see what how you're answering the question. So yes, don't do a let's say a rough copy.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be wasting time basically, right? Because you could be using this time for your thinking process in order for you to produce a good piece of text.
Yes.
So
you could use that time to kind of read it again, notice if you've made any spelling mistakes or missed out a word. That's a better use of your time than making a beautiful copy.
yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you, Alberto. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. This is the answer sheet for the part 1 question, which is compulsory. So every candidate has to write the answer for part 1, right? But when we have part 2, we have
Yes.
options.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll notice that it's on a different page, and that this, for example, is B1 preliminary. You have you have choices, and you have to put which one you choose. So are you doing question 4 or 5? Isn't that right? Or is it, no, it's 2 or 3?
Question 2 or 3.
Or 3.
Yeah.
Can't read it, mine. Yeah, so then you put the one that you're doing. You indicate the one you're doing.
And when you are writing your part 2 answer for B2, C1 and C2.
Now here you have even more choice in the second part of the exam, and you have to write the number. In B1 you just indicate which one is your choice, and in B2, C1 and C2 you have to actually write the question that you have chosen, so the number of the question you are writing the answer for. So it's very important to do that too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. So just as a recap of what you've said, we use the pencil for the answer sheets, reading and use of English and listening. And you must use a black or blue pen for the writing task, right? For B1, B2, C1, and C2, right?
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have some exam tips as well that we want to share with the learners, and no one better than Sarah to share her experience preparing learners for the exams, preparing teachers to prepare learners for the exams, right, Sarah? So we have some tips for the speaking.
Yes. Okay. So this is. I'll actually tell you a little bit about this. This in the speaking test. There are 2 examiners. One's called the interlocutor, and the interlocutor, of course, is the one who's going to ask you the questions, and the assessor is the one who's listening and giving more detailed marks. Both the examiners give you marks, but the assessor gives the more detailed marks because they're just listening to you. Now, my first tip for this is when you arrive in the exam room, say hello. Don't try and shake hands. Apart from the fact that with COVID you shouldn't do anyway, but don't try and shake hands. You just say hello, and then you sit down. And from that moment onwards, you can ignore the assessor. Just look at the interlocutor. The assessor, you don't need to have eye contact with the assessor. In fact, it's not a good idea. Just concentrate on the interlocutor. So the one who is asking you the questions is who you need to look at. I think that's really quite important.
Yes, I mean, every Cambridge exam, B1 preliminary, A2 key, B2 first, for example, you always do your speaking exam in pairs, right? With another candidate, another friend or a classmate, maybe, that depends. But it's always in pairs, right?
Except that, so don't panic if you're at the end of the exam session and you see that there's an odd number, because the last if there are not two pairs at the end, the last three people will take the test together, and you will have a little bit extra time so that you have the same time as in the pair.
Yeah. Sarah, just out of curiosity, tell us something about this room here on the video.
Yes. So yes, exactly. I was talking to Alberto before, and I'd like to share with you too. Now, this week I went to Milan, and Milan is actually where this video was filmed, in a school in Milan. So these are candidates in Milan, and I was there when they made the film. So obviously they were filming students taking the exam so they could put them on YouTube for you to see. So I know the examiners, and I saw the film being made. So interesting for me to see that Alberto chose this picture, and I was there on Monday. So it's absolutely a live filming. So we hope it's useful for you to watch them. I think they're really important to watch other students, and we'll talk about that in a minute, taking the test, so you can really see what it's going to be like, how they speak to you, and what you have to do the best in the speaking test.
Yeah, this is just to reinforce everyone that you should be listening to Sarah, right? So she's been close to all those
Yes,
resources that...
Yes, and in my past, I was a speaking examiner. So, of course, I know how important it is that the candidates are just focusing on the interlocutor and not distracted by the assessor.
Yes, but Sarah, I have some questions here about the speaking test that some of the candidates asked before the webinar.
Okay.
One of the questions is, what if I use American English, American pronunciation? Is that a problem?
Okay, that's a good question. And absolutely, no, it's not a problem. The important thing is to be able to communicate well in English. Now, English, of course, might be with an American accent, an Australian accent, a British accent. The important thing is that you're clear and comprehensible. So don't worry about whether you have an American accent or a British accent. That's not important. What is important is how you communicate in English.
Yes, another question is, for example, if I am doing the test with a partner that is very quiet, for example, does that affect my grade?
Okay, again, don't worry about that, because the examiners are specially trained for that situation. So it might be that you have a partner who's nervous and being quiet and not saying very much, and you want to say more. The examiner is trained to balance it so that you will have your opportunity to show your English, and if the other student is quieter than you, you don't need to worry about it. Just do your best to communicate and include the partner as much as possible, and the examiners will see that. So they will try and make sure that you are having a balanced time in the exam. That's their problem, not yours.
Yeah. Well, back in the days when I was preparing for my Cambridge exams, and that was ages ago, one concern that I had was, how can I feel confident on the day of the speaking test? And what can I do to get, a good result?
Now, that's a very good question. And I know that you're working hard with your teachers, and your teachers are giving you opportunity to practice. But maybe you want to do more practice. So yes, it's important to do the practice with your teachers, but also you can think about using technology to help you practice outside the classroom. So we've just chosen a couple of examples for you to look at. And of course, in all the exams, you have to talk about a photo. It might be just one photo in B1, or you might be talking about two photos in B2 as C1. And so absolutely, if you can use your computer or you can use your smartphone to record yourself, this is really a great way to practice. It's a good idea to have a timer so that you're speaking for a minute, because you'll have a minute in the test. And the examiner will stop you. So if you hear the examiner saying, "Thank you," that means please stop. They won't say please stop, and it means your minute is finished. So the examiner will say thank you, even though you're still talking, Don't worry about that. That's because you've finished your time. So if you do this at home, you can think about how long a minute is, practice the minute, and record yourself. Look at the picture, think about the task for the level of the exam that you're taking. That might be describing the picture at B1, or it might be comparing two pictures and the situation at B2 and C1. So start the timer, record yourself, speak about the photo with the task, and then if you're not happy, record it again. And then when you're happy, the next step is to listen to it.
Yes, I think this is great. Something that technology allows, that you can do the recording again and again and again, and you might just want to focus on the best version of your attempt, right?
And the more you do it, the easier it will be to be able to do it the first time. So kind of practice makes perfect, definitely, and you will become more confident by talking about photo, recording yourself, doing another photo, recording yourself, and you also get used to the 1 minute. How long is 1 minute without looking at your watch?
And then you can ask yourself questions while you are listening and trying to do it again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got those on the next slide, haven't we? We thought it would be useful for you to think about, were you able to speak for a minute? Because if you're not using the minute, you're not using the opportunity to show the examiner how much English you know. So use the time as best you can, try and use all of it. And then if you're repeating or pausing, listen to that. If you're saying okay, okay, or saying a word like that, maybe you need to try not to. Aha, aha. Some people have, that kind of habit. I do too. You know. So listen for that, and then think about it. Was it easy, difficult to speak for 1 minute? Why? Maybe you need to think about your vocabulary, or thinking about how you organise what you say about the picture. So, of course, you can think about your grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, but it's also important to think about, did you structure your answer? Did you think about the order so that it flows in a nice way? So the more you practice, the better it will be.
Yeah. Well, in culturas inglesas, the teachers usually do the mock exam and the speaking mock exam as well with the learners. And they practice the different parts at different moments throughout the semester, for example. But what if I want to see other students performing in the speaking exam? What can I do?
Exactly. So like the picture that we saw at the beginning of this part about speaking, you can go to YouTube, so Cambridge English TV. And on Cambridge English TV on YouTube, you will find lots of examples of different levels of students taking the speaking test. Now, it's really useful to listen to those, to look at the comments also underneath. Some of them have comments that you can read. And you can also listen to the kind of topics they're being asked, how they're being asked, and how they're working with their partner. All those kind of things which are very important. And you will also find in the notes about the videos tips about each part of how maybe you can do your best.
Yes, this image is hyperlinked. So I'm going to ask our colleague Anna to paste the link on the chat so people can easily go to this playlist on YouTube and listen and watch the speaking performance of candidates, taking different Cambridge exams, right?
And as
this
you
is
watch,
a great tip, Sarah.
Yeah, and as you watch it, think about what they do well. Is it because they talk to their partner? Is it because they're using their minute for their picture? So see what you think is good and see how much you can do the same.
Yeah, they won't be able to see you because you were not on the camera right there, but you were witnessing, right?
Yes.
The recording of the video.
It was amazing, and the camera crew who made the recording the week before had been making TV programs on football and on The Voice. So that was the film crew. So quite amazing behind the scenes.
Yeah, really professional staff, right?
Very.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We also have questions about reading. So, you know, the reading and use of English paper, depending on the exam, can
Okay.
be quite long, and you have lots of different tasks, right? So,
Yes.
a key question is, Sarah, can you help us with any tips for the reading section?
Okay, right. Well, particularly from B2 and C1, certainly it is practicing with time, because at C1 you've got a lot of tasks to do in the exam, and so you need to get used to using your time really well and get moving from one section to the next, so that you make sure you've finished everything. Appreciate the texts are very long in C1, but definitely need to practice that. Again, making sure that you know what to do before you go to the exam, but always check the questions when you sit down and you look at the different parts. But if the more you're ready before you go into the test, you'll be able to recognize what you need to do and use the time very well. But always do look at the instructions. Don't just assume you know what it is, just check.
And in the exams, for example, like B2 first, C1 advanced, C2 proficiency, where you also have the use of English items, you have multiple choice, open close items and multiple choice close items, right? Any tips for helping
practicing
us to
that?
decide which word to choose, for example?
Aha. Okay. Well, the kind of there's a sequence which is very helpful when you're doing the closed tests. And the first thing, although you might immediately want to look at the gap, the first thing you need to do is quickly get the gist of the passage of the text, because that will actually help you do the gap fills much more quickly. So if you've got an idea of what the text is about, so get an idea of the text before you look at the gaps. And then when you're looking at the gaps, if it's an open or closed gap, you need to look at what happens before the gap and what happens after the gap, because it's often about the collocation, it's about the preposition that goes before or after, which will help you to choose the right word. And also another tip is, if you're not sure but you have an idea, write it, include it, because if it's wrong, you won't lose anything. So if you're not sure, it's always a good idea to have a try, because you might be right. And that's a very important tip, especially in the multiple choice where you have an option. Don't leave the options empty. Always choose one, even if you're not 100% sure.
Yeah. You were telling me before the webinar earlier today the importance of reading for gist, or reading for having a general idea of the text. Can you share with us what you suggested this morning? Because I think it would help the students.
Did we have a slide for that or not? I can't remember. The one of the things that you can do, of course, is read the text for gist and then look at the questions without reading the options. So you look at the questions and then think about the text. So there's a bit of matching to do. So always get the gist of the text before you look at the questions. I think that's the biggest tip, isn't it, really, Alberto?
Yeah, this is very important for the multiple matching items, right? Where you have, for example, 4 people and 5 different types of holiday, for example, and they have to do the matching. So getting a gist, getting the gist of the text, I think, would be very, very useful for those types of items. There is a curious question that came to us. Can I use a highlighter while doing the reading?
Okay, now that's a very good question. Maybe while you're studying, you're using a highlighter. Unfortunately, during the test, you have a pen, you have a pencil during the reading paper. So you can use the pencil to underline and perhaps star and mark, but you won't have a highlighter. It's not included in the equipment that you're allowed. So just be ready for that, and know that you have to use your pencil to point out anything that you want to remember.
Yes. Sarah, those are really precious tips, and we have a few more things to share with them, because when you're talking about the reading paper, but also all the different parts of the exams,
That's right.
there are so many tips, right, that we need to consider. It would be difficult to speak about each level,
Each
each
part,
exam
yes.
task, each part and everything. We are talking about 4 different
Yeah.
types of exams. What do you suggest then?
Well, we've wanted to show you that there are some special materials for candidates, and this is the one for B1 preliminary, so information for candidates. And for each part of the exam, there are some tips for you, really practical tips. So, for example, in the reading, and that's the tip I think you were referring to, always try and use the title, for example, of the text to help you start thinking about the topic, getting into the topic. It'll be much faster when you have to find the answers. So use the question itself to help you before you even start doing the question. So here you can see an example. There are tips for paper-based and computer-based, which you may also find useful. Now, the other levels have a slightly different look, but they're similar. So for B2, C1 and C2 included, so for those of you who are asking about C2, this is absolutely full of detailed tips relevant to the different parts of the C2 exam. And obviously the others are relevant to each of the exam level in the booklet. We really recommend you download these because inside you'll find tips about each part of the test and do's and don'ts, which are very helpful too. So what to do and what not to do. So you've got do's and don'ts, and we've also got typical questions that students ask or candidates ask. You can see the people on the left with a speech bubble. They're asking typical questions, and then we have the expert on the right giving a practical example, and then we have the do's and don'ts, which are relevant specifically to each one of the tests. So definitely have a look at the one that you're interested in.
And if you want to download those information for candidates, just go to the exam on our website. There is an area on the left called preparation. When you click on preparation, you will be able to access and download those information for candidates booklets, which are really, really useful, full of ideas, right, Sarah?
Absolutely, and they're quite new, as you can see here. So I think you'll find them really very relevant and very informative. So
And
lots of things that maybe
links.
we didn't have time to do today, you'll find things there as well. And they have links, you're right, they have active links that take you to different parts of the test, don't they?
Yeah. So in terms of writing, we have seen that we have the answer sheets, right, with lines. And we must use a pen for the exams B1 and above. But we have received some questions as well in terms of, for example, spelling mistakes. What if I make a spelling mistake in my writing?
Okay, well, obviously spelling is important, and you want to make as few mistakes as possible. But don't forget that that's not the only thing which is important. It's part of the things that are considered. So try not to make a spelling mistake. But if it's legible, and obviously the examiner can see where it's coming into the context, you won't lose any marks. So do think about it, and obviously try to spell it correctly. But it's not the end of the world if you don't, because obviously there are other things that are important as well.
Yes, another question that I've been getting as well is, for example, if I use American spelling, if I choose to write the word color without the U, COLOR, instead of LOUR.
Absolutely, that's a good question. Now, again, it's not a problem if you use American English. What is a problem is if you change, so you do a bit in British English and a bit in American English. So if you are using American English, you need to use it all the time. So any word that has a British spelling and an American spelling, you need to use the American spelling if that's what you're doing. So if you start with colour without the U, any other words that are American spelling need to reflect. So it shows that you know you're using American English and not swapping between the two, which is you don't know how to spell it.
And the other question as well, Sarah, is each exam will have a specific, or you will have a range of number of words that you need to include, right? what if I write more than the expected number of words, or what if I write too little? There seems to be, a concern about this.
Yes, no, it's an important question as well. Obviously, the number is given to you to give you an idea of how much you need to write. Now, if you write lots of words more than the word limit, there is a risk that you're starting to move away from the question and writing irrelevant things, so things that are not necessary and won't help improve your results. If you write fewer words than the number, the risk is maybe you haven't answered each part of the question. So if you write too much, it's a problem. If you write too little, it's a problem. So roughly, now don't spend your time counting words. That's another disaster and waste of time. One of the things that you can do in preparation is when you're writing your piece of writing at home or in your class, notice how much in your handwriting, how much space it takes, so that you have a rough idea of how many in your handwriting, how much space you need for that number of words. And it's, as I said, it's only approximately. So if you're a little bit over, that's not a problem. If you're a lot over, you probably are being irrelevant, so you need to doubly check that you have been relevant to the question. Also, you'll run out of space on the question paper. There won't be space for you to write too much. So also that will guide you a little bit. Alberto, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would like just to remind everyone about the time management during the writing paper, right? Make sure that you split the time for each of the tasks that you have to answer,
yes,
right?
That's important too, because each question has the same weight, so the same importance. So it's important that you've answered question 1 and your second question. So logically, you probably need to spend the same time on each question so that you get the same importance for your answers.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, we have questions about listening in terms of skills, right?
Yep.
A lot of learners are concerned about listening in terms of how to get prepared on the day of the exam. We know that we have some time before the audio to read through the questions, right? How should we make use of this time?
Now, of course, before you get to the exam, you're going to have done a lot of practice with your teacher. And again, being familiar with each part of your listening test, so you know which, part 1 is going to be like this, part 2 is going to be like that, so that your expectation of the next part helps you already, so you know what's coming. Now, as Alberto says, at the beginning of every section, or every part of the test, you're given time to read the question. Now, it's really important that you actually look at the question and you use that time to see what you need to answer. Also, use that time to use the question to get your mind into the topic, because that will help you listen better. So use that time. Don't just wait, look around, wait. Use the time. It's really will help you focus on what you've got to do and help you activate, we say, the topic in your mind, which will help you listen for the words, listen for the topic, and find the answers. Again, if you don't forget that you're going to hear it twice. So the first time, you're obviously going to have a think about your answer, and the second time you can confirm your answer. So it's very important to use the 2 listenings again. Sorry, Alberto, you were going to say something too.
That was my question, what to do while you listen to it for the first time and then the second time. But thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing those tips. I think the other question was about results, right? Candidates, after sitting the exam, they receive 2 documents, right? One of the documents is the statement of results, and it is usually available within 8 weeks. Most of the cases before that, but we say within 8 weeks.
Yes, so we get what's called a statement of results, and it looks like this. And this gets sent to you about 8 weeks after your test. And you can see your each skill, and you get a result for each. So this is an example of B2, and you've got reading, use of English, writing, listening, and speaking. And you can see where you are on the results on B2, where you stand. You get an overall result. You can see there, and then which is this kind of total of everything. It's calculated as your total. And don't try and calculate it because it's a very sophisticated algorithm. So it's a mystery, but it's calculated by UK to make sure that your result is fair and clear. So you've got an overall result based on your performance in each part of the exam, which you can see here.
And let's take B2 first as an example. If you sit B2 first, you might get different levels, for example, right?
Now that's a good point too. So when you're taking B2, you hope you're going to pass and get a pass grade C at least. And if you get a pass grade C, then that's what you're expected to do in the exam. Now, if you get a slightly different result, and I think we have another little arrow, if you do very well, and we can see that on the Cambridge English scale there, we've got 180. So you're getting, for example, a grade A. Your performance is actually in the beginning of the C1 category. So although you've taken a B2 exam, because you do very well, you will get a certificate that says pass at C1. Which is
Does
great.
that mean that I should skip the C1 advanced exam?
Now, I wish it was that simple. It just shows that you're a strong student and that you've started, if you like, at the bottom of C1. And so, no, definitely, if you're hoping to do C2, you still need to think about studying and preparing for C1. There's a lot to do in C1 before you're completely, if you like, C1. So, yes, it means you've done very well, but I definitely wouldn't recommend you skip it if you're going to go and do C2 as well. Is that your experience, Alberto?
Yes, and also there are cases when the students don't achieve the minimum to get a pass or to get a grade C or a grade B in the exam they are doing, right? In which case, what happens
Okay,
if
so
they don't
yes.
achieve the minimum?
Okay, now again, Cambridge wants to reward you for what you can do. So you've taken your B2 exam. Unfortunately, you haven't got the grade to get a B2 certificate. But if you've got you can see here, you've got a slightly lower result, you will still get a certificate that says that you're a B1, you've got a B1 level. So that's something. We obviously hope that you will get your B2, but if you don't, then you might be given a B1 certificate.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for answering those questions. So after you get the statement of results, a few weeks later, you will be receiving your
certificate. And what's important about your certificate is don't lose it. So keep it somewhere very carefully, and you'll see that there's a hologram on it, because obviously it's difficult to copy, so you have to have an original certificate with a hologram. So it's very, very important. It's like having a banknote. So that's why they have it, because it's a really important document. It's your document, and keep it for life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that comes like a few weeks after the statement of results, because counting from the day of the exam, about 8 weeks later, you get your statement of result. Then from the day of the exam, within 12 weeks, it's usually before that,
yes,
you get your certificate, right?
And you can see on the certificate, again, you get the summary, you get your level, and then you get the scores that you got on each of the different papers, and the total overall score. So it's lots of information about you, and you can see the code of where you took the exam, and so it's a very formal document, and of course the security on it is important too.
Yeah, well, we have many questions in the Q&A. I think we have asked many of those questions throughout the webinar. So I'm going to ask my colleague Edmilson or Anna to kind of flag whether there are questions that we haven't addressed.
Alberto, I think you have explained that very well, but candidates still have doubts. If you could please just go over again pen and pencil. Okay, that has generated lots of doubts.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we? So, pencil, reading and use of English for B2, reading for B1. So let's do it. So, reading for B1, listening for B1, reading and use of English for B2 and listening for B2, reading and use of English for C1 and C2, and listening for C1 and C2. Pen for writing. Pen for writing. End of story.
Yeah. Either black or blue, right?
Yes, and no highlighters. You can't take a highlighter, so you could take a pencil and you take a pen, and black or blue.
And if you could also reinforce about the 10-minute warnings and the 5-minute warnings, because candidates were worried about, oh, how am I going to manage time? Okay. Is it will there be someone who's going to tell me, the time is about to finish?
Yes, that's a good question as well. So in all the papers except for the listening, where the tapes that say the recording gives you the time limit, so it says you have 5 minutes to transfer your answers. In the other papers, you will be invigilated by the staff, and the staff will be making sure that you are obviously following the instructions, that you're staying in your place, and they will also give you information before you start, and they will also remind you when you have 10 minutes before the end of the test and when you have 5 minutes before the end of the test. They will say it to you, and then they will say that's the end of the test and you have to put down your pen and your pencil immediately. That is the end of the test. Put your pen down, pencil down, no extra time.
Perfect.
Alberto?
Anna, would you like to say something?
No, I was just going to ask you guys to also reinforce about, the clock was a big hit here. Everybody concerned about managing time and etc. Some people asking about medication. Can I bring medication? Of course, if you have medical reasons to take it to the exam venue, you should bring your medication. Don't worry about that. Also some specific questions about each paper, about each exam. So I would recommend that everybody check with their teachers or on our website, because we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all the exams in this session. And also a very important one about headphones. People were asking if they should bring their own headphones from home or if they are going to be given headphones at the exam venue. Can you talk about that?
I can't answer that question because it depends on the individual exam venue. So, okay. So obviously, if you're doing a computer-based test, you wouldn't be bringing your own headset. Now, I think it's unlikely you're bringing a headset. Again, check with your exam, with your school, but usually they are provided. So if you're using a headset, they're provided, and if you're not using a headset, there will be a stereo system, but obviously tested to make sure everyone will be clear. Each exam centre will have that information. That's why I can't give
I think it's very important to reinforce that headsets usually apply if we are talking about computer-based exams.
Yeah.
Because the candidate at some point said, oh, I received the summary of regulations, and it said there somewhere that, okay, there will be a headset. Okay, this makes sense for computer-based exams.
Yes.
If you are taking a paper-based exam, okay, headsets wouldn't apply.
Going to be listening to the listening part all together in the room. Okay, yes. So everybody's going to be listening together to the audio in the room. So there's no need for headsets.
And the exam centre will check that they will do sound quality before you go to the exam, just so you know. And they will also do a sound check at the beginning of the exam before you start the test, to check that everybody can hear. So if you're worrying about that, don't, because the exam centre will make sure that you have the best conditions to take the listening test.
Great. And I think the final big one was about snacks and food. I know they are allowed to bring some snacks to the venue, and I think if you can please confirm, I think it depends on the venue to establish the rules. For example, they can eat during the papers, or can you talk a little bit?
No eating is an easy rule. No eating. You're allowed water, unless there is a medical reason that they would have to eat, and then you would have to provide evidence that you have a medical reason. Otherwise, no eating. So make sure you've had a nice breakfast if you're taking the exam in the morning, and that you've eaten before the exam. And you can take water, but that, and as you said, in a container without any labels. And obviously be very careful with your water during the test, because you don't want it on your exam paper. So always think about where your water is, if you have water with you.
And you don't do all the, you don't do all the papers in a row. You have breaks between papers.
Yeah, I was just going to share our experience here that we provide a bigger break, because only during the break, okay, Sarah was saying that you are really not allowed to eat anything during, okay, while you are taking the component. But for example, here, this is our experience. I'm not saying that all centers do that, but here, usually between the first and the second break, okay, the second component, candidates are given half an hour, okay, to take some sort of snack. But again, only during the break.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, all exam centres have breaks. How long they are might differ, but every exam centre will have breaks. So you'll be able to eat something then.
Well, I think we have covered most of the questions, right, Anna?
Yes, at least the most popular ones and not very specific. Yes, Edge, thank you.
Well, I think we can, I don't know if Alberto allows for it, if Sarah allows it, can we come to conclusion?
Can I just finish answer one question here about the marks in the writing paper? Someone has asked about the grades and how they are distributed. Well, the writing tasks will receive points for each point in the criteria. So they have the points in the criteria, and then they have up to 5 marks for each point in the criteria. So you have to make sure you meet those requirements, and those points in the criteria and the description of the points can be found on our website, but you can ask your teacher and they can show that to you.
I saw there was a question about wearing masks during the speaking test, and yes, it's a COVID requirement to wear masks. Mm-hmm. And the examiners know that, so don't worry about it.
Other than that, Edmilson?
So I just would like once again to thank everyone, all the candidates, okay, from all the centers. Special thanks to Sarah, okay, for taking the time, for sharing her amazing experience with us. Okay, thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Cambridge, Brazil. It's always a pleasure, okay, to be with you, and reinforce all candidates. If you still have doubts, contact your center. Okay, so whether it's Cultura Inglesa or any other culturas or any other centers, if you have doubts, okay, the center is there to help you, okay, to assist you in any way we can. We know that, okay, we tried, okay, beautifully, Alberto and Sarah, to answer most of the questions, but we know that maybe something, okay, could not be answered. So make sure you contact your center, okay? We are here, okay, to provide the best customer service. This is a must for Cambridge and for all culturas to provide the best service that we can.
Absolutely.
So once again, everyone, Sarah, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you very much to you and to your team and to everyone who's here today. And it only leaves me to say good luck in your exam.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah. Good luck. You're going to rock in the exam day, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Best of luck in your exams. And thank you, Sarah and Edmilson and Anna, for organizing all of this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.